Hi. Today I'm not reviewing a great artwork from the past. I'm going to talk instead about creating a panel for painting. Specifically, I'm going to address creating a long-lasting linen canvas on an ACM panel support. And what does art sit? If we're talking paintings, it sits atop its support. Whether canvas, panel or other supports, there is more to painting a picture than just finding a flat surface. Yes, I know Goya painted some of his pictures on the walls of his house, and there's now a team of conservators who have to look after them. We have to allow that our own artwork may not warrant such effort, so best to give it its best chance. You might think that painting supports are now so well explored over so many centuries that all artists who want their work to last know what to do to ensure their work has longevity. Not so. There are paintings from the Renaissance that are lasting longer than paintings from only a few decades ago. There is plenty of advice around on YouTube that is based on, well, I've been doing it my way for the last 30 years and no problems so far. That's right, so far. And that's the point. I know not all artists want their work to last. They consider the ephemeral nature of their work to be a part of the artistic expression. But for most of us, we are painting for beyond our own lifetimes, and we want it to last. The hard part is painting something worth someone else wanting to keep. So the support part should be the least of our worries. Just get it right and get painting. The cracking of paint in older paintings is so ubiquitous that many people assume that this is just what happens to art over time. But there are things you can do to give your art a better chance. Firstly, why not just paint on stretched canvas? Stretched canvas is subject to changes in humidity, which will stretch and loosen it, even if you can't see it happening. Canvas is also subject to puncture and tearing. Further, the rolling of a canvas for transport, or even storage in some cases, is going to subject the paint film to more stresses, all of which will weaken it. Certain pigments, for example zinc white, create paint films which are weaker, and placing these onto a moving, stretching, shrinking support can lead to flaking, and even the dreaded delamination. Okay, so why not paint directly onto panel? Yes, panels are considered to have greater longevity, but they have their own problems: splitting, discoloration of paints over time, weight, and more. But many artists do paint directly onto panels, and there are older works on panel that have survived well. Some, for example, on copper panel have also retained their youthful vibrancy. But if something goes wrong with a panel, saving the artwork is difficult. More modern panels, such as aluminium composite material, or ACM, seem to hold great promise. But because ACM is a relatively new material, we don't have centuries of experience of seeing what happens to any grounds and paint films applied directly to them once they have been prepared. So ACM could be good as just a panel, but we just don't know for sure yet. It's so inconvenient. We want modern materials to have solved the support problem, but we just don't know. However, there are centuries of experience in dealing with canvas. Conservators know what to do should the need arise. This gives rise to the idea of adhering canvas onto a panel, trying to achieve the best of both worlds. Today I'm going to show you the method I use. It is not my method as such. It is one I developed through the advice given at the University of Delaware's Materials Information and Technical Resources for Artists, or MITRA, but mostly through testing that advice with discussion within an art practice group which I respect, frequented by experts. So here it is. This is how I adhere linen to ACM. First off, materials. We're going to need an ACM panel, some scissors, a brayer, a brush, a canvas, a sander, some isopropyl alcohol, a bit of archival PVA, pH neutral, and some lead oil ground. And something to spread out the PVA glue. I've just got a piece of flat edge timber there. My method. So I get my canvas ready, pulling it out. It's a Clayson's 166, which is an acrylic canvas. The reason I got acrylic is because I can't buy a lead-based canvas in Australia that doesn't have zinc in it. So I've got an acrylic ground, I've got my panel ready, and I'm just pulling out my canvas, and I'm marking out the size of my panel, which I'm going to cut. I'm going to leave about a thumb width all the way around, and I was a bit close to the selvage on this one, so make sure you leave enough room for the selvage on the edge where there's no acrylic ground. So I'm just marking it out, and I'm now going to cut it. First off, of course, I'm going to draw some lines. A couple of lines. Of course, I'm trying to make my lines match the weave of the canvas. And I cut out the rectangle of canvas. Alright, here's my rectangle. I've got another panel which I'm just going to use to start spreading it out so that it's flat, or gets flatter. It's quite important to keep it flat, as we're going to see later. Alright, I'm now going to prepare the panel itself, so I'm taking off the protective sheeting, which is on both sides. I do both sides at once so I don't forget to do the other side. I'm going to use the white side. ACM comes in lots of different types, but if you've got a white side, that would seem the one to use. And I've got about a 120 grit pad on the sander. I'm going all over the panel, being careful, of course, to make sure the edges and corners are completely done. And I'm also trying not to cut through to the aluminium underneath, just to scuff up the surface. Now I'm putting some isopropyl alcohol on. That's not only to clean off from the sanding, but also to remove any glues or anything that are left from the protective sheeting. Back inside, I've got my archival PVA, and I'm now going to spread that on the panel. So I've put some out, and I'm using my spreader to spread it around. For this one, I put the archival PVA just on the panel, and you'll see in a moment that I sprayed the back of the canvas with water. It does cause it to ripple up, which is a bit unnerving, and now I actually put PVA on the other side of the canvas as well. I position the panel on the canvas, and again I'm trying to line up the weave of the canvas, of the linen, to make sure that when I cut it, it looks kind of neat. There's always bits of glue that get everywhere, so you get rid of that. Alright, turning it over, it looks awful, it's all bubbled up, and I've got my brayer, and I'm now which is just a roller, it's just a rubber roller used in ink printing, and I'm just using that to smooth my canvas all the way out to the edges. You'll see there's a couple of bubbles there, and in fact I left one bubble in, you might notice, and which was a bit of a worry, but it does tighten up when it dries, and luckily the bubble disappeared when it dried. And I've now put it on its face, and I'm now loading it up with weight. Now luckily I've got a lot of extra panels, so I'm using those as weight, but it's important to get the weight all the way to the edges. That's the important part. And then I just left it overnight, weighted it down with some more books, and left it. Alright, so I'm now going to just have a quick look at what I've done overnight, and when I went around the edges, don't be fooled by the puckered edges, but as I went around the edges there were a couple of little spots that I went round just with a paintbrush and a bit of PVA glue, and just ensured that the edges were totally down flat. You'll see that the whole thing's really quite flat now. It's been pulled in. The drying seems to really pull it in, which is why you need to leave a little bit around the edge. So now I'm going to put the ground on, and I've got my Williamsburg lead oil ground, wearing my gloves, and I'm now going to put that over the surface. So this will give me a lead oil ground to paint on, which I think is going to be a lot better. So here I am putting it on, finishing it up, all sped up. Yes, waiting. Okay, alright, so I've got all my lead oil ground on now, and now I'm just going to leave it. I was going to leave it just overnight, but in the end I left it for 2 or 3 days, so that's exactly what I did. And now I've got my piece ready to cut. And so it's now dry, completely dry. It's actually about a week and a half later. I turn it upside down. I've got a very sharp new blade on my knife, and I'm just going to go around now and cut off all the excess using the panel as the guide. Around all the edges, getting it in a position where I can cut it properly and running it down. You'll see one of my cuts a bit later wasn't totally neat, but I did trim that little bit of extra off later. Alright, and there's my completed panel. So I hope that's been useful for you. If not, don't worry, next month I'll be back to giving you my reactions to great art. Thanks. Hi, thanks for watching. If you want reactions to more great art, please like, subscribe and ring that notifications bell. See you next time.